Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Radio Free Urbanism, a podcast about urbanism and stuff like trains, because we all love trains. I'm one of your hosts, Alex Williams, and of course, I'm joined by Ethan. Say hello, Ethan.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast.
And our friend, Nick Laporte.
Hello, and can I just say a big congratulations to our very own Ethan Myers. Just crossed 5,000 followers on YouTube.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
Thank you guys.
Congratulations. Maybe if I post another video sometime, I might reach that goal someday.
You'll hit 10K after your next video.
Oh yeah. Could you imagine? The next video I have is not going to, the one that I'm working on right now, I know it's not going to be like a big view getter, but it's special to me. So stay tuned for that. We've got some interesting news to share on the show today. Some exciting things, some less exciting things, and some very optimistic things. So we'll get into it with a not exciting thing, kind of a sad thing and disappointing thing. Nick, if you want to take us away with the first story.
Yeah, so this is something that I saw on the Toronto subreddit, and this is something that's becoming a lot more common, and that's battery fires. So this video is actually on YouTube, and I'm going to share my screen right now and just kind of loop this. And this is a fire allegedly from an e-bike on the TTC, and the TTC is the Toronto Transit Commission, on the subway, and it looks pretty bad. It's certainly not a place that I'd want to be. Oh, this is definitely not what I wanted to. What is this? Oh yes, did anybody see this self-balancing monorail?
No. Okay.
Anyway, sorry.
We'll talk about that.
Back to the fires. Yeah, this is a big problem. And if you hadn't heard, I know in New York City they've been dealing with this, and last year they've had at least 14 people killed and 93 people injured from what they believe to be lithium battery fires. So yeah, that's not great. It's not something we want to see. So it's something I'm really concerned about, obviously, because it gives a bad image to micromobility in general, especially electrified micromobility. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of, I just want to have a little PSA that we need to take into account what you're buying. I know it's tempting to buy the cheaper stuff. You'll see an e-bike or a scooter, electric skateboard, whatever it is that looks cheap. It looks faster than the more expensive one. It looks like a good deal, but it just might not be.
If it is on Alibaba, probably not a good option.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And even on Amazon. So New York actually passed a law recently. So I'm going to read here. This is New York City Local Law 39. It prohibits the sale, lease, or rental of e-bikes, electric scooters, and their batteries that do not meet specific safety standards, primarily those approved by the Underwriters Laboratory. That's the UL standard you usually hear about. And it's something that should be done like across the board. We need to make sure our batteries are safe. So this law aims to address safety concerns related to e-bike fires. First-time violators receiving a warning, but violators can result in a fine up to $1,000 per non-compliant device. And despite this law, companies like Amazon, Walmart, and eBay have continued to sell non-compliant e-bikes and batteries in New York City. And apparently Amazon is the first one who's stopped doing that. So as of today, I'm not sure exactly which ones are or are not, but it's that was a bit disappointing. So it's something to consider in the first place, that we need to be buying lithium ion batteries that are going to be safe. They're going to pass these tests. But more importantly, we need to think about the technologies that we can move to that aren't going to have these problems. So that problem I'm talking about is called thermal runaway. Mm-hmm. And what happens, if you've seen a video of this, I'm sure many of you have seen this video where somebody's sitting in their living room, there's an electric scooter or a bike there, and it basically it looks like, we were talking about Oppenheimer before the show here. It just looks like just white light, and it all catches on fire and the whole thing just goes. So that they can actually make batteries, rechargeable batteries, that don't do that. And I can't remember which compounds they're called, but there's a company called Swifty, and they actually won these startup awards at Micromobility America in this past October. And their scooter, I think it's called the G500, has a battery in it that does not suffer from this thermal runaway. It's basically impossible for it to happen. So it's much safer. But the problem is, and I think this is probably the reason why a lot of people and a lot of organizations aren't picking up these batteries, is because they are actually bigger. The energy density is not as good as the traditional lithium ion batteries. And that's keeping them from actually using them. Obviously, they're going to get more dense. Technology is going to get better, but it's something to consider.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So New York has these rules, but how is that really enforced? Because if you're in New York, you can just leave New York and bring this other thing in.
Yeah.
So I know that New York does actually quite a bit of pulling over e-bikes and stuff like that. So I really think a lot of that is probably up to local law enforcement on how they want to enforce, checking batteries and stuff like that. But that would be my guess on that situation for enforcement, at least. I mean, honest, like, I don't know if they really can't go into houses and search for that, but if they're on the street operating, in a public space, then they can stop them and check and inspect.
Yeah, and there's a lot of bodegas and small shops that offer illegal charging for delivery drivers, where they'll have a basement full of batteries where they can just swap out batteries as they're working, type of thing. And that's also been a problem. But there's a video that's really worth watching. So this is from Micromobility America back in October. It's up on the Micromobility IO, or is it Micromobility Industries YouTube channel, and it's with the fire commissioner from FDNY, I think US DOT, and somebody else. And I listened to it a while ago. I was there, listened to it live, but I listened to it again a little while ago, and they talk a lot about this stuff. I think their main point is not to try to ban e-bikes or scooters or anything, but obviously just to make them safer. And a big point of contact is just education and letting people know like why you should be getting a UL rated battery, why you should care about this, and why you don't want these, out of market batteries in your house.
Yeah, because
they can be deadly.
Yeah, and I imagine the place where it's most likely to happen is in your home while it's charging. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah. So I mean, get yourself something quality. If you're worried about it, I know there are like some special things, special casings or something that you can get to kind of protect your home, protect your property from any potential fires. And obviously, it's important to note that if you're riding like a decent quality e-bike with like a Bosch motor or something, this probably isn't really going to be a big concern for you. These are like the cheap things that we're mostly talking about.
Yeah, and it's often people adjusting batteries, making their own batteries, Frankenstein batteries at home. That's a very common thing too. Not that common, but it's common enough that it's becoming a problem.
Right.
So, yeah. Just
Concerning.
be safe, but spend the extra money. Get the good battery.
Yeah. It's worth it. It's going to last you longer. It's safer for everybody.
Yeah.
It's definitely.
And again, I think this is obviously the biggest concern is the safety. We don't want to see people getting killed from fires from micromobility. This is something we want to be safe in our community, like out on the streets and at home. But the thing that really bugs me is the bad press it brings. And this is the same thing you get with electric cars. And I feel like when it comes to fires in electric cars, it gets over publicized. One Tesla catches on fire and it's like on every news page across the internet. And obviously I don't like that. That's not what I want to see. This is not the move we want. We're not looking at, what's not getting publicized every day is how many people are being killed in cars, and just traditional cars, any gas cars exploding, people getting run over. It just annoys me a little bit. That's all I want to say.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that, Nick. I've got a bit more of a positive story to share, and that is that the Green Line in Calgary, Calgary's new LRT line, is beginning construction in 2024 of phase 1. And of course, I don't know if you guys missed it this past week or not, but the year changed. It is now 2024. So that means this year the Green Line will begin construction, and I could not be more excited. This portion, phase 1, is going to run from Eau Claire down to Shepherd Station, which if you're not in Calgary, and even if you are in Calgary, that might mean nothing to you. Basically, it runs from downtown to the southeast, not all the way down south as far as it's going to go, but it's going to go down to the southeast to Shepherd, which is where they're going to have what do you call their like big transit hub where they park the trains and work on them and stuff?
The shop, I believe,
the shop.
It's the train shop, basically.
Yeah. So that's going to be down at Shepherd. The depot,
whatever. Yeah, a lot of terms.
Yeah. So that'll be at Shepherd, and so it'll end there. It's going to be a big transit shop, and I'm very, very excited for it. I'm just sad that it's not quite going to my childhood neighborhood. So I'm gonna have to wait a little bit longer for that station to be built. But that's some good news for us. Yeah. Any questions about this? I'm like your
So
Calgary ambassador.
Well, I want a bit more context about. I've ridden it, but just for the wider audience, what's the context of the transit in Calgary? What is this line exactly?
So Calgary Transit right now, as it stands, we have 2 LRT lines, the red line and the blue line. We also have a few max lines, which are kind of a BRT-ish, depending on which section of the line you're on. And then the green line is going to make a huge difference. It's actually, I forget what the stats are. I'll have to find some stats, but it's going to serve a ton of Calgarians. And here's the thing, guys. This line, the first study for it was done in the mid to late 80s. So this is a long time coming, like a very long time coming.
A little bit.
Yeah. And on certain segments of the line, as you're driving down those roads, you can see like, that's a really wide right of way. I wonder what that's for. It's for the train. It's for the train. We've known this train was going to be here for decades and decades. I remember growing up asking why there was this huge wide patch of grass on the side of 52nd Street. Why is there so much grass there, Dad? And it's for the train. It's for the train, son. And I cried because I love trains. And so it's finally coming, and it's going to fill in a huge gap. Calgary Transit actually has a very successful light rail. I think it is the 3rd most ridden light rail in North America.
Wow.
So it's very busy, and it's just 2 lines. Yeah.
I see. That's got my mind blown because I'm just like, all right. I'm just trying to imagine because at the moment that I know, LA and San Diego are actually the top 2. So I'm just trying to think. So Calgary at 3. I'm like,
yeah. So annual ridership for 2022 for our light rail ridership is almost 62 million rides.
That's a lot for 2 LRT
That's pretty
lines.
Good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a busy train. So according to Wikipedia, it's Guadalajara, Calgary, Toronto, then San Diego, and Los Angeles.
Wow, I did not realize its ridership was that high. Wow.
Yeah. So we're doing all right. So I'm really excited to have this 3rd line coming in, and it's looking like it'll be around 2030 that the first rides really start going on that. Although in the podcast I listened to, which I'll link in the show notes, it's the Calgary Eye Opener podcast. The guy in charge of the project, he was hesitant to give any firm dates on this, but this one is also different from the other light rail lines in Calgary because this one is low floor. The other ones are high floor light rail.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I'm excited to see the low floor trains coming in on this. Should make the platforms a little safer, I think, for a light rail train, especially since we don't have like the what do you call the platform screen doors?
Yeah, PSDs.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm excited for this one.
That is awesome. I can't wait to see it.
Is it going to have the same? Is it going to have the same rolling stock as the other 2 lot? Wait, you just said low floor.
No,
floor,
yeah,
so no.
Yeah, because it's low floor. So the rolling stock for this one is coming from CAF in Spain.
So do you know where the other ones are from? For the
other ones, they're Siemens, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, and they've been running for a long time. They still have a few of like the oldest trains running on there. That's the thing. I think a lot of people miss out on how long trains actually last.
Mm-hmm.
If the transit service keeps them up well, like these things last 30 plus years.
So I was in St. Louis over the summer, and they have a light rail system there, and they're actually still running some of their original rolling stock from when they opened in the early 90s.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't even know because they had gone through like a renovation in like the mid 2010s and are actually they're still really nice. They're getting a new fleet actually that got announced a few weeks ago, but it's crazy how long light rail can last and how good it can look if it's well maintained too.
And I assume this is not like a Ship of Theseus situation where most of it's being replaced, like a lot of it is actually intact.
A lot of it, yeah, from the original trains is still intact. A lot of them still have the original like outside paint too, which is crazy.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. If you take care of your stuff, guys, like it'll last you a long, long while. Yeah, so I'm excited. I'm excited to see more trains coming to Calgary and fill in some of the gaps that we have. Maybe I think a video I'll make sometime on my own is some of the areas that will be served by this train. So I'm very optimistic about it. But a train that I'm not optimistic about, I'm hopeful, but I don't know if I can be optimistic, is the train between Calgary and Banff. If anybody's ever been to Calgary, it was probably to get to Banff. I've met several people who told me they've been to Banff but never been to Calgary, which is a lie because to get to Banff, you have to fly to Calgary. And then, of course, drive to Banff. There's been talk of a train going out there for a long while, but apparently our tourism minister is not sold on it, which is depressing. Ethan, if you had to sell Alberta's tourism minister on a train to Banff, what would you say?
Um, hmm. I don't know. Is he one of those like Alberta oil guys? Because I know Alberta is kind of similar to the Texas
Yeah,
of Canada.
he might be. Honestly, I don't know that much about the guy. If you had to sell somebody on it, though.
Well, if you're gonna sell people, if you're just gonna sell tourists, then you get the whole wonderful. You don't have to rent a car. You don't
Hmm.
have to drive there. You don't have to find parking. You can get food on the train. It's very comfortable. There's a lot of ways that you can sell people who are visiting tourist sites on trains. I mean, it's a great way to get people to tourist destinations.
Yeah, yeah, it is fantastic. Nick, what about you? What would you say to sell the world on the train to Banff?
Trains are better. That's all you have to
Train,
like.
trains
Trains
are
are just
better.
better. Like, come
It's
on.
true. It's true.
Train good, car bad.
Anybody who's ever been to Banff knows how insane the traffic is there because it's just full of cars. Nick, have you been to Banff, Nick?
I have. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's bananas with cars.
It's insane. We
Yeah,
had one of them. We brought one of the cars. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
We
because you
thought
had
we
to
were
get
helping.
If
there.
you've been to any national park ever, Canada or the US, it's the
Yeah.
same thing.
Mhm.
It's all
Yeah.
cars.
Yeah, same thing. Yellowstone. How often do you go to Yellowstone as just a line of cars all the way through the park? It's brutal. And so a train would help alleviate that. One of the biggest things people bring up, of course, is the train won't make money, right? You're going to have to make the ticket prices so high that it won't make money. Which to that I say, this isn't meant to be a profit center. This is meant to be a cost center, where we are putting in money here as this part of the system so that we gain more elsewhere in the system. It's the same as advertising,
All
right?
these people just have all these people who are against trains just do not understand ancillary economic benefits.
Yeah.
Like you don't
Yeah.
have to have the train make money if it's making more money for everything else there.
Hmm.
Mhm. It's the same with highways, right? And it's the
Yeah.
same
Yeah.
argument. You'll get that argument when you start talking about trains or you talk about the cost of highways. Well, now people say, "Oh, well, think about all the things you get from highways. Things get shipped to you. Everybody benefits from highways." And it's like, yeah, that's what we're trying to say about the trains. That's what we're doing here. That's why we're going to build it. It's going to be better for
Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I want the train so that I can get to Banff comfortably without a car. I won't have to park a car. I won't have to maneuver a car through the traffic there.
Mhm.
And in the summers, they've already closed down car traffic on Banff Ave, which is the main avenue in the town site. It's only for pedestrians, cyclists, and the electric transit buses
See,
that go through.
that is exactly like Zion National Park in Utah. It's this really beautiful canyon national park, but like
Hmm.
the only way that you can realistically get into Zion Canyon is by taking either their electric shuttles, e-biking, or hiking in, or just
Hmm.
normal biking too, because there's not any way that you can get that kind of capacity in there. Now, to get to the park, you still have to drive there, and there's a huge parking lot outside of the main canyon, which is, great use of our natural lands, just putting giant parking lots on them. But I wonder if there was a way that we could maybe get more people to our national parks without having to, have everybody drive there. And it
Yeah.
doesn't even have to be, trains. You can still use buses too if capacity can't meet it. Now, capacity will always meet it because national parks are incredibly popular.
Mm-hmm.
But the train, any way to get their car free is great.
Yeah. So one thing that the tourism minister said is that the parks are very full. And the thing is, they're mostly full of cars. And it's important to remember that humans, just our feet and the garbage we bring along with us, regardless of our cars, regardless of our infrastructure, we're destructive, right? You get a lot of people digging a trail, right? Killing native wildlife and plants and stuff, disturbing the habitat. That is a real issue. But cars do that on a significantly greater scale. And so if we were able to train into these areas or e-bike or however we get there more sustainably than cars, I think that's a plus. There are also ways to mitigate traffic in these areas, human traffic, not car traffic, human traffic in these areas. You can just say there's a cap on the number of people who can come here. You can just say that, right? It's a national park. You can just say, hey, listen, we have a limit in order to protect the environment. One thing recently that was done was Parks Canada closed the Moraine Lake Road to personal vehicles. Moraine Lake, I promise you, if you have been on the internet, you have seen a picture of this lake. It is Reddit Lake. If you Google Reddit Lake, a picture of Moraine Lake will come up. That's how popular this lake is on the internet. Ethan's Googling it now.
I know exactly what it looks like, but
Yeah.
Moraine Lake in 2023, the road was closed to personal vehicles. There are shuttles that you can pay to take you up there. You can also ride your bike up there. There are e-bikes that you can ride up there, so you can still get there. But they just said, you know what? It is too busy with cars, and so they said no to car traffic. They already did something like that, and I think that is something that they could do in Banff as well, except for obviously the residents.
Wait, Alex, you're telling
Yeah.
me that a place closed down car traffic
Mm-hmm.
and it saw increased business because people saw an opportunity to do a thing like renting e-bikes and regular bikes?
Yes.
No way.
Yes.
No way closing down a road increased business in the area.
That never happens.
Never.
It also increases fun because e-bikes are a great time. And you're in the mountains, but if you're riding around on an e-bike, you can crush those hills pretty comfortably.
There's no worry.
Absolutely. It's so much fun. It's so much fun. But the thing that bugs me the most about this whole thing is that we don't have this lake on our money anymore. It used to be on the back of our money. Like, why isn't it there? Come on. Like, they got the new bills. I get it. The Canada Arm. Would you say they get the train on there? I get the trains are awesome. I get it. But like, come on.
Yeah. It's a beautiful lake. It's untouchable. It's true. So I am hopeful that someday this will be built, but I think we need to put a little bit more effort into communicating that this is something that we value and that we care about. And I also think people need to start seeing this infrastructure as not just a money pit, but an investment for the province, for mobility freedom, and for people getting around.
For my American viewers, there are actually 2 national parks that you can get to by train that I know of 100%. There's Grand Canyon National Park. You can take the Grand Canyon Railroad. They do a really fun thing where they run old 20s Pullman cars on it, and it's basically a railroad museum that kind of does a fun thing to get to the national park. It's not the cheapest in the world, but it still gets you there car free. And then there is why am I blanking out? Glacier National Park in Montana. You can take the Empire Builder there either from Chicago and Minneapolis or Seattle to get to that park.
Huh. I did not know that. All right. Well, add those to my bucket list. Actually, we'll just add those to the podcast budget.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like that's something we'll
have to investigate. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Looking into it.
We need to experience this for ourselves. But speaking of experiencing things, we experienced some listener mail because, we've got so many huge fans out there. So thanks, guys, for writing into us. We have some comments to share with you guys. If you want to write into us, you can comment on our YouTube video. It's at radiofreeurbanism. And you can also send us an email at radiofreeurbanism@gmail.com. So, Ethan, if you want
can
to take us away
also
for...
DM us on Instagram at Radio Free
Yeah.
Urbanism. I will check that, and we'll all check it, and then we'll see that listener mail there too. But our first
Ethan will
piece of
check it.
listener mail, yes, comes from Austin over in our YouTube comments, and he commented regarding cycling around Vegas. It seems like an underrated place to cycle with some huge attractions nearby: Red Rock Canyon, Hoover Dam, and Mount Charleston. And with a growing network of separated cycling infrastructure like the Beltway Trail or Wash Trail, which has a lot of bridges/underpasses on the intersecting roads, yes, I'm going to be the psycho that attempts climbing Lee Canyon with my bike. Now, he's not wrong on that. There is actually a lot of really cool places that you can cycle to in Vegas on the edge of the city, and he named quite a few of them. I've been to Red Rock Canyon with my e-bike. Absolutely amazing experience. Highly recommend. There's one right by my house called the River Loop Trail, and it's a 30-mile round-trip trail that goes by Lake Mead and through some of the mountains to the east of Vegas. Really beautiful experience. But yeah, I mean, also gotta say, Lee Canyon, very bold. Hope you have either an e-bike or absolute leg muscles for days, because that is a climb.
Tell us about Lee Canyon.
So Lee Canyon is essentially I believe it's about an 8-mile road with about an 8,000 foot elevation gain. It essentially takes you up into Mount Charleston, which is the highest mountain around Las Vegas. Now that peak is it's almost at about 12,000 feet, which is pretty damn high. I can't do the meters conversion in my head right now, but yeah, I mean, the road ends at about 8,000 feet, and then you take hiking trails up from there if you want to summit the mountain. But yeah, I mean, if you're up for that challenge, I mean, it's a real challenge. There really isn't a whole lot of bike trail up the mountain itself, but I mean, there are a lot of nature trails around here. Like Red Rock Canyon has some decent separated bike infrastructure. The area around Hoover Dam and Lake Mead has a ton of trails that you can go to for cycling, hiking, anything like that. And like I said on the last episode, Las Vegas is really great on the edge of the city for bike infrastructure. The closer you get to downtown on the Strip, the worse it gets.
It's just the opposite of most places, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I was in Las Vegas, this was years ago, I role played, I cosplayed being a goddamn red-blooded patriotic American, and I rented a convertible Chevy Camaro because that's what you do. And I had a great time seeing these places, but I went to Red Rocks, I went to see the Hoover Dam, and I can only imagine how much more fun it would have been on a bike, especially Red Rocks. When you go through Red Rocks in a car, it feels like, you know what it feels like when I think about it? It reminds me of Jurassic Park. It's weird. Like there's this black tarmac that's just like weaving through like a rock garden. It felt so unusual. It didn't feel like I was really in nature. I was looking at it from afar, even though I was in a convertible car. It doesn't matter. I don't know.
It's a really incredible experience. For anybody who doesn't know, Red Rock Canyon is just this. It's not really so much a canyon. It's more or less just like a very small valley between these huge mountains. And it's got a 15-mile loop for cars, but it also is open to cyclists too, and it's wide enough to where cars have their own lane, and then cyclists have their own wide lane as well. It's a really incredible experience if you're ever in Vegas. I highly recommend renting e-bikes and going out there because it is beautiful. It's probably like the highlight of like nature around here.
Yeah, it's incredible.
And it's nice. It's nice that it's accessible.
Yeah, it is
in that way too. So we wish Austin good luck on his cycling. I'm not a sports cyclist.
He's got it. I believe in him.
Austin goes pretty hard. He knows what he's about. We've got another comment from Jen on our YouTube channel as well. She says, one variable or nuance that may not be factored into the walk score is winter maintenance. A perfect accessible sidewalk or micromobility lane turns into a hazard, and in some cases completely inaccessible due to lack of snow and ice clearing maintenance from the city or from property owners. This is a huge issue, and a great point that Jen brings up. Of course, Walk Score is not going to go and analyze and audit everybody's winter clearing every year, but this is a big issue. Making sure that pathways remain accessible at all times of years. You've probably noticed, if you're walking around, the curb cutouts that are designed so that wheelchair users, people using walkers, people pushing strollers can get through and across the street comfortably and easily from one sidewalk to the other sidewalk on the other side of the street. Those often get covered up with snow, with big snow mounds in front of it. And I know this might not be a huge issue to my co-hosts, because they live in places that don't experience those issues as much. It is a big issue, and I can manage through there fine. But if I ever broke my leg or something, or had another issue that limited my mobility, it'd become a huge problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Something I've noticed recently too. I've been slowly orange pilling my wife, and we went to the grocery store the other day. We just walked there, and there's a curb cutout, but it was a really bad one. And I noticed it. I just looked at it, whatever. I'm like, that's not good. Like, you had to, if you were trying to cross in one direction, it was totally fine. But you go in the other direction, you kind of had to go around. If you were in a wheelchair or something, like, you just couldn't go straight across the crosswalk. And then she pointed, she's like, that's not very good. And I'm just like, quietly kind of just proud. I'm like, nice. She's like noticing a crappy curb cut. I'm like, I'm doing something right.
Yeah.
But yeah, so this is something. So I'm gonna keep shilling for myself. But my recent video, I went to Walk Score a bit for my recent video when talking about the top 10 bicycling cities in North America. And this is something I kind of thought too, is how Walk Score might not have that kind of built in, but I think it is sort of built in, at least when it comes to bike score, is that the modal share will dip in the winter if it's not adequate in some cases. And that might reflect it a bit. That's just only one it's not Walk Score, it's bike score. So it's only one portion of the website, but that's one way it might be kind of integrated into the score. Maybe that's just my thought.
Yeah. It I don't know. It's the winter maintenance stuff, because I know there's the video about how they do their stuff in Finland, right? And how it's this amazing city to cycle around in the winter. But every city has different winter conditions. We know Montreal, for example, gets a ton of snow. Quebec City gets even more snow than Montreal. Calgary doesn't get a lot of snow, but we have these weird freeze thaw cycles throughout the winter.
Also insane, brutal cold.
Right. Like, so in Calgary, we get these things called Chinooks. They're a warm wind that comes off of the mountains, and it can warm the temperature 30 plus degrees in an hour. And it gets pretty intense. Like, you could have snow one day, and then the next day you're walking around in your t-shirt. And the paths are dry and clear. So each different place, I think, needs to figure out what kind of snow maintenance and snow clearing is going to work with them, so that they can make paths that are accessible throughout the year.
Just not salt.
Yeah. I want to do some research into what's some good ways to clear the paths, because it gets to be a mess. Ethan, you should come visit me in the winter. Spend a winter here, and we can see
winter in Calgary.
Yeah.
Spent the last 5 years in Florida and Nevada. I'm gonna die.
Do it for the podcast. Do it for the podcast.
Research.
It's for research purposes. I'll put you up. I've got a couch and a couple extra air mattresses. So next, though, we've got a story from Milwaukee with Ethan here. He'll fill us in.
So I was scrolling Twitter like one does, and I came across a wonderful tweet from a city I used to kind of live relatively close to. I've been to it quite a few times, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And it is pretty well known for having this urban freeway called I-794. Now, if you're from the Milwaukee area, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Every single Milwaukee urbanist wants to set dynamite under this freeway purely because of how pointless it is. But I saw this video on Twitter, and it was this video. A car had gotten into a car fire on I-794. I'm going to share my screen if I can figure. Here we go.
I like the idea of getting into a car fire.
So yeah, getting into a car fire by pure accident, but it comes to us from Sean Rowland over on Twitter, and it is this car fire happening. But as you can see, traffic is still moving forward in both lanes unimpeded because of how empty this freeway is and how pointless it is.
Yeah.
It is literally, it's a freeway that is so pointless that like no one uses it. Like it's that point, and there's currently an ongoing debate. I don't know if it's still going on, but it was either for repairing parts of 794 or straight up just that the sorry, I forgot to keep playing the video. But
No.
yeah, the point of it is that there's currently like an ongoing debate from everything that I've seen about the city of Milwaukee wanting to repair the freeway for $350 million since it's kind of going into disrepair since it has these crazy overpasses over downtown. But there's a lot of urbanists in the city of Milwaukee who want this freeway completely removed. Now, there is a portion that's currently being studied for removal. I don't think the whole thing is being studied, but there are a lot of urbanists in Milwaukee and the Midwest in general who want this freeway completely removed.
God, it's just insane to see from the air. So I'm not that familiar with Milwaukee, but it's not that uncommon. Any kind of city in North America, for the most part, is going to have something like this. But how close this insane spaghetti bowl is to the downtown core of Milwaukee is just a disgrace. So you can see that big extension heading towards Lake Michigan is where it connects to the I-794. It just, it seems so pointless because a lot of it just kind of looks like a shortcut over top of industrial land. That's what it looks like from the
it
map,
was
right?
originally supposed to go significantly further south and pretty much be like a whole lakefront freeway across the south shore of Milwaukee. Here, I'll get this pulled up on camera for us guys. Give me 1 second here. Here we go. So we have I-794 right here. It starts at this interchange with I-43 right here, cuts through downtown, if you guys can see my cursor, but it kind of cuts through downtown.
I can't see your screen, Ethan.
Oh, you can't? Of course it's not sharing. Oh my goodness.
That's why I shared the video
Here we
before.
go. I'm sorry, I thought it was sharing earlier.
Oh, he's got it.
But if you can see, if you can see now,
there we go.
Like,
it's coming up. There we go. Okay,
if you can
perfect.
see here, I'll get my cursor here. But it starts at this interchange with I-43, kind of cuts through downtown right here, and then cuts south over basically the port of Milwaukee, all the way down, and just kind of ends here. Just kind of ends by Three Brothers right here, this little restaurant. But yeah, it's not long. It's not a long highway. It's pretty useless, actually.
That's weird.
Yeah, it's one of those projects that kind of just like, it was supposed to be a part of a larger urban freeway network, but got canned like halfway through it. And there was actually some highway that did exist in Milwaukee that has been removed. I think it was part of a downtown bypass. But Milwaukee is a city that really has not been afraid of highway removal, which is interesting because this is very much a project that, honestly, I think they should just completely rip apart the whole thing. It is...
Yeah, because it doesn't really look useful.
No, it's not. And that's
like,
why...
it doesn't...
Like, it might be a shortcut for some people who live kind of closer to the lakefront in the south, but really, it's not... I feel like that's not a huge deal breaker.
It's kind of the freeway to nowhere of Milwaukee. Like, if you guys know, Baltimore has this like 1.5-mile freeway that was supposed to be like really long, but got canned by, anti-freeway activists. It's essentially kind of in the same boat. It just doesn't really have a purpose. It's kind of past its prime. Doesn't really have the traffic that people were expecting to see on it. And realistically, at this point, it should just be torn down. I mean, there's no point in keeping it up. And I remember driving or being driven through this area as a kid because my family used to take vacations up to like near Door County, Wisconsin. All my Midwesterners know this is like, it's like the beachfront haven of Milwaukee and like Lake Michigan on that side. But I would always see this freeway out the window and I'm like, I wonder why we're not going over that bridge because it runs parallel to I-43, if you can see on that map.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. It's also elevated. Is it elevated for most of its run?
It's elevated for its entire run, actually.
Really?
Wow.
It is a fully elevated downtown freeway.
That is very expensive.
Yeah.
That's like, yeah.
And they had,
that's
for the bridge that goes over the mouth of the Milwaukee River, they had to make it large enough so that way, Lakers could go underneath it. Full on, like, cargo ships on Lake Michigan.
Yeah. Yeah, that definitely seems like an easy thing to just say, you know what, we're going to tear this down, because keeping it up for another, 30, 50 years, I don't, yeah. But of course, I don't live there. So it'd be interesting to hear from somebody who lives in the area.
Any of our Milwaukeeans to give us a better fill in on this project. But I remember seeing it before. I've seen all the Rethink I-794 projects, which honestly, great idea. But hopefully, because I'm just confused with the information. I've heard conflicting reports of like, oh, I-794 is getting taken down, or it's getting a $350 million repair. We'll just have to see, just from some people who are on the ground there.
Yeah.
Tear it down. Tear it down.
All right. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That is maybe something hopeful, I think, something a little optimistic. Who knows? Maybe in a decade.
I do know
or
a
two,
very
it'll be
short
something
portion
beautiful.
of it is going to get torn down, from what I've heard.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully Milwaukee can restore its downtown grid just a little bit more,
Yeah. Yeah, that would be nice.
It's on a city that's building a lot of light rail for itself and building BRT networks. Very promising Midwestern city.
Yeah, and it's something where you can see how it changes the fabric of the city. Like, what's the one in Seattle that got torn down? Is it like an Alaskan Way or something?
Alaskan Viaduct, yeah.
So obviously they had some kind of alternative. They built that tunnel, and that was kind of the trade-off that they had. But
speaking
just
of
looking at it, go ahead.
Full-on freeway removal, the best one that I've seen so far is Rochester. They removed a portion of their ring freeway around downtown, and they full-on turned it into dense mixed-use walkable developments.
Really?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And then also Detroit's looking at removing one of its downtown freeways too.
It's probably a good idea.
That's great. That is fantastic.
Honestly, Detroit's like on the short list of places I need to visit soon, because I really want to see what's going on there right now, because I feel like it's on the upswing. I need to check it out.
Yeah.
It's been a long time since I've been.
It's exciting to see some of the stuff happening here, and I'm really optimistic that we can do this sort of thing. I know City Nerd just published a new video. Why aren't amazing public spaces car free? This is a huge problem in the US and Canada. I know Nick commented on one of my videos when I talked about Calgary's car free street. We have one avenue, Stephen Ave, that is car free, and Nick mentioned that Vancouver doesn't have a single car free street.
No, we have Granville, which is like the main strip downtown Vancouver on the peninsula, which does become car free sometimes. Not much of it, but there's a portion of it kind of in the mid to eastern part of the town where it's only buses and only taxis are allowed on that part of the street. And at night, I think it's only on some weekends or holidays they'll actually shut down the street. Nobody's allowed on it. That's just what they shut it down past that time. But generally other places, like it doesn't exist. And there's like two places that I think could be full-time. Well, Granville, obviously, but also Robson, which is a bit farther to the northwest. But Granville Island is the number one place where I'm like, let's get cars the fuck out of here. Like, it's insane. So Granville Island is one of, like, so for example, that video that City Nerd Ray posted today, I only watched the first part of it, but he talks about Pike Place, and that's kind of his case study from what I understood. I only watched the first 5 minutes before we started the show. It's a lot like that. It's a market. It's a place where people go to walk around, to have a coffee, to buy things. It's also a tourist destination, but for locals, people like me, I like to go down there and just have a coffee and walk around and people watch. It's a great place, but there's a big problem. There's massive cars driving around this tiny little spot. Why can't we make it car free? It's insane. It just drives me mental.
I was in Seattle this summer too, and I obviously had to go to Pike Place, but I did notice that the cars are really infuriating there. Like, there's absolutely no reason why cars should be there. Like, it is just so infuriating when it comes to it, because I just don't understand why they're there.
Yeah,
why we have to let
insanely valuable. Yeah, insanely valuable space where somebody could park their car for $3 an hour. It's just
What's even crazier too is speed limits are 10 miles an hour there. So there's really no reason why you'd want to cut through there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Why would you want to do that to yourself anyways?
This is why I'm giving the award the best city market in North America at Reading Terminal in Philly.
Yeah.
I'm going to put that on my list right now. I'm like making
Reading
this
Terminal
list of places I have to
amazing.
visit this summer.
And underrated place if you ever find yourself in Los Angeles is Central Market.
Central Market.
Yeah, I'll put that on the list too.
We have a long list of places to go, so we
I'll
better
be
start
back
getting
there eventually.
some of that WEF money or whatever's going to fund this podcast.
Totally. WEF isn't paying out like they used to.
It's true.
They did give me this really nice plushie, though. I will say that.
So nice. I do want to mention, like, we're talking about these, going car free and these removing highways and stuff like this. And one thing that City Nerd mentioned in his video was the retractable bollards that you see go up and down in Europe to allow permitted vehicles into the area. Those can be delivery cars. Those could be taxis, buses. It could be the cars of people who live there. When I was in the Netherlands last year, I stayed in a town called Weert in the bottom of the Netherlands in the south. And it's got a population of 40,000 people or 50,000 people. And they've got like a whole network of just walkable streets in the middle that just there's just no cars. And it was a beautiful day and people are out walking and it's quiet and it's pleasant to be there. We can create those spaces too. It's not like we're not locked into this, right? We don't have to stick with how things are. We can create beautiful spaces as well. So I'm optimistic, but it's too bad that so many obvious things, right? Removal of I-794 and pedestrianizing Pike Place. It's disappointing that these things haven't happened. That obvious,
they seem
things.
Obvious at least, right? Some people will be completely against it. But I think what we can do is at least do pilots. So at least here in Vancouver, we do car-free days. I know that we have Kitsilano Festival. It's just like a 1 or 2 day thing in Kitsilano. They shut down 4th. They do a car-free Main Street. I went to that last summer. It was fantastic. It's happening. It's so it's unbelievably busy. It's amazing. And it's so much fun.
Yeah.
Would that happen every day? No, of course not. But we can do pilots. You can shut down a particular road just for a month. Say we're going to do a car-free Robson for 1 month and just see what happens. See how it affects business. Does it go up or down? Is it going to affect traffic in a way that's just not doable? Like we can try these things out and then remove them if it doesn't work.
And we have so many non-arterials that we can do this on too. And we don't even necessarily have to make all of our streets car free. But if we slow down traffic enough to say 10, 15 miles an hour to where, it's not useful as a through road, then you're going to see a significant reduction in the amount of cars that use that space. And you're also going to see noise go down because when you reduce car speeds, you reduce the noise that they produce.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's going to be much more pleasant.
Yeah. Things like traffic calming are huge for that. They'll make better open spaces on, non-arterial streets. And then, we can also, once we, reduce the amount of vehicle traffic on these streets, we can test them out being car free too.
Yep. Yeah. In Calgary, related to what Nick was saying about these pilot projects about, hey, let's just shut it down and see. In Calgary, we've got 33rd Avenue, which is a very busy road. But they shut down for a few Sundays each summer, and people are out. They're enjoying the summer. They've got markets set up there, and it's a beautiful, great time. And then there's another street that's kind of like the nightlife street in Calgary, I guess you would say. Calgary doesn't have like a huge nightlife scene, but if you're looking for it, it's on 17th Avenue. And the businesses on 17th Avenue, kind of their business association there, they got together and they sent out a survey saying, hey, how would people feel if we shut down to car traffic sometimes? And of course, everybody was very excited because on 17th Avenue in the summers, what they'll do, they'll kind of route the sidewalk around into the parking spots. and they will have patio dining for the restaurants along there. So the patio dining ends up taking up the sidewalk. So then the sidewalk ends up taking up the parking spots. But of course, while you're sitting on this patio, enjoying the weather, enjoying your food, you've got these loud cars racing by behind you. And so it's kind of created an environment where people say, you know what? Let's just shut it down to car traffic. No cars allowed here anymore. It's driving us nuts. So hopefully this summer we'll see some piloting of that, and hopefully down the line we'll see even more of that, because what they're also doing is they're routing 17th Avenue into Stampede grounds, and then it's going to go down past the expanded conference center that we have here in Calgary, and past the new sports arena that will eventually be built as well. So it's going to create, hopefully, this really great event space that is continuous and pedestrianized. So I'm optimistic for that. So we'll see how that goes.
Sounds exciting.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
I know Vegas in like the 90s got pretty desperate to get people back to downtown Vegas, which is like the older part of Vegas. It's not on Las Vegas Boulevard, so it's not the Vegas Strip you think of. But what they did was basically the old Vegas Strip, known as Fremont Street, was fully pedestrianized in the 90s, and then they put a giant like sunshade / LED board above like a good like 5 blocks of the street, and it became known as the Fremont Street Experience. And so now that's become one of the biggest tourist destination points in Vegas, is the car-free street that they made.
Yeah, like people like being in these spaces, and people come from all over, and they add it to the list of, oh, I've got to go there to this pedestrianized street. So hopefully we can see more of that.
But the business owners always say that their business is going to tank if there's no cars on the street. I hear this one from every single business owner. And they clearly must be right, because, all the data says they're wrong, but, we got to listen to the business owners because they're clearly right on this one.
Well, and I want to legitimize that fear a little bit, because the experience that they have is that that's how people have gotten to their business, right? And so if that's how people have gotten to their business so far, of course they're going to be nervous about it. And so it is a bit of a, it's nervous. I can understand why they're nervous to make that jump. But of course, we have seen again and again that it does improve business for those businesses. You can move more people by bike and by foot and by transit than you can by car.
They're also more likely to see your business too.
And they're more likely to see your business because they're moving slower, right? And so, yeah.
Not because they're moving slower too, but it's also because they're on a more human scale. And they generally have that freedom to be like, hey, I don't need to go search for parking. I can either stop because I'm on foot or I'm on a bike, so I'll just swing it right around and then park it out front, because it's a lot easier to park a bike anywhere that you feel like.
And they have more money to spend at your shop.
Exactly. That's true. Absolutely. Yeah, and it's not like it'll work everywhere. It doesn't mean it's going to work in any place. You just make like a pedestrian mall, it's going to be a success. That's not the case always. I remember watching City Beautiful, one of his videos a long time ago, talking about that, the success and failure of pedestrian malls. And back then, when they kind of swept the nation, a lot of them failed. But again, it's a different time. Things were going a different direction back then, when we were really, the full experiment of car dependency really kicked off. So times are changing. But yeah, it's
also about accessibility, right? Like if you built a pedestrian mall in the middle of a farmer's field, of course nobody's going to show up. They can't get there, right? Yeah. And so I think it is important to remember, are these places where people walk going to be accessible by other means of transportation?
Yeah. And also, to be fair to the business owners, a lot of associations are becoming wise to the benefits of bike lanes and pedestrianization and what that does to business. A lot of them are becoming in favor of it. So that's good.
I mean, it was the Business Improvement Association of 17th Avenue that put out the survey saying, hey, it wasn't a city initiative. Yeah. It was the businesses who actually suggested it.
Not to keep on this sideline here, but Kansas City kind of did the same thing with their business. The reason the KC streetcar exists at all is because of a business improvement district.
Really?
Yeah. I believe Detroit's in the same boat too, but it essentially was a bunch of businesses decided to get together and form or it was basically the downtown businesses voted to approve a special tax district to fund the local streetcar, because transit also benefits business too. So essentially,
That's
free
cool.
streetcar, extra business tax, but more business to the businesses and higher property values.
Right. That is super cool. Huh. Do we have additional thoughts on this, Nick, or are you ready to get to your wug mug?
I just want to say, let's try it. Just give it a try. Let's get some pilots going. See how it goes.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's not really a wug mug. It kind of is what grinds my gears a little bit. So this is a story that I saw on Global News one morning when I woke up. My wife was watching the news, and there was a story about a kid who got kicked off a bus. So this happened in the interior of BC. It's about halfway between Vancouver and Calgary. So a child was put on a bus. I say child, a 15-year-old teenager was put on a bus in Vernon and was sent to their mother's house in Abbotsford. So that's, I think, about a 4-5 hour drive, something like that. And what happened was, once that bus got to Kelowna, I think it's about, 40 minutes from Vernon, something like that, he had to transfer. And they found out that he wasn't, quote unquote, old enough, because they had changed their policy recently that anybody who was under the age of 16, unaccompanied, was not allowed to ride in the bus. So they kicked him off the bus. To be fair, they waited with him until their parents could come pick them up from Vernon. The parents had to leave the work or whatever, screwed up their whole day to come pick them up and then drive them all the way to Abbotsford. It just seems ridiculous. So this reminded me of another story that happened a while ago in Vancouver, where this guy, Adrian Crook, he would just let his kids take the bus, like the city bus, the transit in Vancouver, to school, 4 kids together. He got reported to the child's, I can't remember the name of the association here in BC, but essentially child services, somebody reported him to child services, and they went after him, said, not only can you not have your kids ride the bus alone, they can't be alone anytime, anywhere, if they are 10 years or younger at all. So he fought them for years. This was back in 2017, and he finally won. And basically they had to backtrack everything, which is incredible. But it you know what? It does grind my gears. It's ridiculous. We need to give kids freedom. It's ridiculous.
They need to be sheltered in a suburban McMansion until they're 16, and then they can finally have the slightest taste of freedom by being able to work a minimum wage job and then get McDonald's after work. That's the best you get.
Yeah. It is wild that kids are expected to be chauffeured around forever until they can chauffeur themselves,
until they can
right?
drive.
There's no experience with their own mobility freedom. And I remember, like, growing up in Calgary, we have some decent bike paths and nature paths and stuff. And I'd go out on those with my friends on my own, right? And my parents were good about that. My parents let us walk to the grocery store on our own. And I was fortunate to be in an area that was walkable enough that I had that freedom. But then to kind of perpetuate the inability for kids to be humans and individuals and to kind of experience the world on their own and experience that mobility freedom. You're not helping anybody, right? You're not helping the society, right? You're not helping create individuals who are capable of taking care of themselves and finding a way through the world if you're coddling them like this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like, I had a similar experience. I grew up in a small town. When we were ready for school, my mom would walk us to school for the first day. Like, we're talking like kindergarten, grade 1. And then it was like, there you go. You know how to get to school. And we would walk ourselves to school every day. Granted, it was only a few blocks away, but still we could be alone for that time and be responsible enough to get ourselves to school. On the weekends or after school, we wanted to go play with our friends. We'd get on our bikes and we'd ride there and we'd go to the park. Mm-hmm. We got in trouble sometimes. I remember riding down hills. My brother broke his arm. Things happen. But that's the experience of growing up and learning responsibility, learning how to take care of yourself and learning how to navigate the world. If you wait for people to do that, Well, we know where it leads to. It's been going on for the past, I don't know how many years, 20 years. I'm sure Ethan, I don't know how he's even survived this far being a Gen Zer. So it surprised me, but what we see is the differences between
Yikes.
what we have here in North America versus what we have in the Netherlands, where kids can just go off on their own. And I'm not saying the whole free range kid thing or whatever, but just having that responsibility to be able to take themselves to where they need to go is a huge part of growing up. And it grinds my gears that people get in the way of that. Like a 15-year-old can't get on the bus to go to his mom's house. Like, it's just ridiculous. Like,
we've got Nick yelling over there, like, old man yells at clown.
Yeah.
Totally. I mean, growing up, my parents were pretty. I mean, when I became a teenager, or not even like 12 years old, like, you know, like you can go down to the 7-Eleven or, you know, the Jewels. I know all my Midwestern people understand what that is. And, you know, you can do all the basic stuff. But I grew up with the privilege of living pretty close to a metro station in the Chicago suburbs, which is kind of like the GO train for the Canadian listeners for Chicago. I'm a little more ancient, but, you know, it still does the job. And, you know, when I was like 17, 18, 16, I would go down to Chicago, you know, hang out with my friends there. But I mean, I also had the opportunity of living next to a really great bike system called the Illinois Prairie Path. And so I would, you know, get in like rides on the weekends and go down to Batavia, Illinois, which is like a really nice little river town, or St. Charles, Geneva. They're all really nice little river towns. Then I'd also go down to downtown Aurora, which was the city that I grew up in. And, you know, they're all really nice. And it had me, you know, get a good experience of, you know, existing independently by myself.
Is that Aurora, Illinois?
Yes, from Wayne's World.
Wayne Campbell's from Aurora.
Yes. Garth Algar too.
Oh, that's great.
That's funny. But it is a huge deal. That independence, that freedom for kids to be able to experience the world without being kicked off of a bus. That sucks. That really, you know,
at 15 too. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit silly. I can see if like somebody put a 5-year-old on the bus, they'd be like, how'd you get on here in the first place? But like 15 years old,
right?
It's just, it's a bit too far.
Yeah, especially at 15, you can have your learner's license.
Yeah,
right. Like, in Alberta, it's 14, right? Like you can start getting around. You can start operating a motor vehicle if you can, you know, be trusted to drive on the road. And to start learning to do that, I think you should be able to be trusted to navigate your way around a bus service.
Yeah. You can fly alone too at that age as well, I think. If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think so. So yeah, that sucks. And I think that's I don't know, hopefully this experience has kind of helped people reconsider a little bit about how we're treating the young people in our society and helping them navigate the world.
Hope so.
Hopefully.
Any other closing thoughts? Because that was the last thing on our agenda today.
I don't know if I have any, but no. It seems like we're getting one of the shortest episodes we've ever created, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, all I have to say is train good, car bad. That's about it. You know, just a classic line.
You know what? That could just be our tagline from here on out. Just end with that.
Train good, car bad. Yeah. Let's build that train to Banff. How about we? I'll say thanks for listening. If you want to follow me, you can find me at Humane Cities on Instagram and YouTube. I promise I'll have a video out.
We're waiting
soon. This week
eventually.
Maybe. Who knows? Maybe at the same time as this video. Maybe that's what I'll do tonight. I'll like power through.
Man.
So I don't know if that got through on the mic. That sounded like there was like thunder like 3 seconds away from me. Not even like it was loud. There was like a power flash in my house. Yeah. It's like pouring in Vegas.
Nice.
Barely getting any rain here in Vancouver. What's going on?
Yeah. Well, okay. Send some moisture our way, Ethan. We could use some snow. There, I said it. I said it.
It looks like we're getting snow. I'm not looking forward to it.
We're getting in the mountains, so.
But Ethan, do you want to plug your
Yeah,
stuff
I'll
there
plug
before
Climate and
the
Transit
thunder
too before
kicks you
I
off?
eventually get cut off by my own internet here. Yeah, Climate and Transit on pretty much every social media you can think of. I have a new video coming out this Friday. Hopefully you guys are excited for that one if there are any Climate and Transit fans in the audience. But yeah, new video coming out.
Perfect. And Nick.
Yeah, you can find me on YouTube at Nick Laporte or Nick the Door and other places.
Fantastic. All right, folks. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Radio Free Urbanism. Until next time, go for a walk.
Ride a bike.
See ya.